The Voice in the Crystal Halls. The palace of starfall glass rose against the horizon like a dream caught between earth and sky. Its walls, forged from translucent crystal mined from the Deep Vale Mountains, shimmered with trapped light, casting rainbow patterns across the marble floors. Travelers spoke of its beauty in hushed reverence, but Cale Riven had come for different reasons entirely. He stood in the Gallery of Echoes, his leather journal open, charcoal pencil moving swiftly across the page. The ancient inscriptions carved into the walls told stories of kingdoms that had crumbled to dust centuries ago, their languages preserved only here in these silent corridors. Cale's fingers traced the weathered symbols, his lips moving soundlessly as he translated fragments of forgotten prayers and royal decrees. The palace was empty at this hour, or so he thought. The morning light filtered through the crystal ceiling, painting everything in shades of amber and rose. Cale stepped back to admire a particularly intricate mural depicting a celestial court when movement caught his eye. She entered the gallery like dawn breaking over still water. Queen Isara Sylvain moved with a grace that seemed effortless, her gown of midnight blue flowing around her like liquid shadow. Silver threads were woven through her dark hair, catching the light with each step. Her face held a serenity that spoke of years bearing weight others could never understand. Yet her eyes, deep and luminous as mountain lakes, carried something else. Loneliness, perhaps, or hunger for something unnamed. Cale froze, his breath catching. He had seen portraits, of course, but they were pale imitations of the living woman. She paused before a window, unaware of his presence, her profile illuminated by the morning sun. In that moment, she looked less like a ruler and more like a painting of divinity itself. "She moves like poetry made flesh," Cale whispered, the words escaping before thought could stop them. The palace had other intentions. Built by architects who understood the language of sound, the crystal corridors caught his quiet confession and carried it through the air like a silver thread, delivering each syllable directly to her ears. Isara's head turned sharply, her eyes searching the shadows until they found him. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Cale felt heat flood his face, his mind racing for apologies, explanations, anything to undo the moment. But what he saw in her expression wasn't anger. Surprise, yes. Her lips had parted slightly, her eyes widening. But beneath that, something warmer flickered to life. Something that looked almost like wonder. She had heard countless flattering words throughout her reign, each one calculated, rehearsed, designed to gain favor or position. Empty phrases from empty hearts. But this accidental confession from a stranger who believed himself unheard, rang with genuine truth. Isara took a step forward, then another, closing the distance between them with measured grace. Cale's heart hammered against his ribs. "You're the scholar," she said, her voice soft as silk over stone. "The one studying our inscriptions."
The Garden of Unspoken Words. 3 days passed before Cale saw her again, though she occupied his thoughts with persistent constancy. He buried himself in his work, translating texts that spoke of ancient love stories and tragic queens, finding uncomfortable parallels in every verse. The palace staff treated him with quiet courtesy, providing access to archives and forgotten chambers, but none mentioned his encounter in the Gallery of Echoes. He had convinced himself it was finished, a momentary embarrassment to be packed away with his completed research, when a servant arrived at his chambers with an unexpected message. "Her Majesty requests your presence in the Moonflower Gardens at sunset. She wishes to discuss historical matters." Historical matters. The formal phrasing did nothing to calm the anticipation building in his chest. The Moonflower Gardens existed in the palace's eastern wing, a sanctuary where night-blooming flowers released their fragrance only as daylight faded. Cale arrived early, his scholar's robes replaced with something slightly more presentable, though still humble compared to courtly fashion. Lanterns hung from silver chains, their flames dancing in the evening breeze. Isara was already there, seated on a stone bench beneath an arbor of white blossoms. She had abandoned her crown and formal regalia for a simpler dress of dove gray, her hair falling loose around her shoulders. The transformation made her seem more approachable, more real, though no less beautiful. "Your Majesty," Cale bowed, unsure of protocol. "Isara," she corrected gently, gesturing to the space beside her. "Here, in this garden, I am simply Isara. Please, sit with me." He settled onto the bench, maintaining a respectful distance, though every nerve in his body hummed with awareness of her proximity. The air between them felt charged, heavy with things unspoken. "Tell me about your research," she said, turning to face him. "What draws a scholar to dusty corridors and forgotten languages?" The question opened a floodgate. Cale spoke of his childhood in a village where stories were currency, of discovering his first ancient text in his grandfather's library, of the thrill that came from breathing life back into silent words. Isara listened with genuine interest, asking questions that revealed her own considerable knowledge. "And what have our inscriptions told you?" she asked, her eyes reflecting the lantern light. "That your ancestors understood something modern kingdoms have forgotten," Cale replied, warming to his subject. "They believed a ruler's greatest strength came not from conquest or wealth, but from understanding the hearts of their people, from being truly seen and truly seen in return." Something flickered across Isara's face. Recognition, perhaps, or pain. "A beautiful philosophy," she said quietly, "but difficult to practice when everyone who looks at you sees only a crown, never the woman beneath it." The vulnerability in her admission struck him deeply. "I see you," Cale said before he could stop himself. "I saw you in the gallery, moving through light like something from the old stories, not a crown or a title, but a person carrying impossible weight with impossible grace." Isara's breath caught. Years of courtly training, of maintaining perfect composure, threatened to crumble into the honesty in his words. When had anyone last spoken to her without an agenda, without calculation? "You're dangerous, Cale Riven," she whispered, though her tone held no accusation. "You say things that make me remember what I've tried to forget." "What have you forgotten?" "That I'm human, that I can want things beyond duty and expectation." The moonflowers began to open around them, releasing their sweet perfume into the darkening air. Cale reached out, plucking one of the delicate blooms, and offered it to her. Their fingers brushed as she accepted it, and neither pulled away. The touch lasted only seconds, but in that brief contact, everything changed. Isara felt warmth spread from where their skin met, a sensation she denied herself for so long that it almost hurt. Cale's hand trembled slightly, his scholarly composure failing him entirely. "Your Majesty, Isara, I should—" But she shook her head. "Stay," she said simply. "Just a little longer. Let me be human for one evening." They sat together as stars emerged overhead, talking until the moon rose high and the palace bells chimed midnight. And when Cale finally departed, Isara remained in the garden, holding the moonflower and feeling for the first time in years like something more than a crown. The festival of veiled hearts arrived with the changing season, transforming the palace into a realm of mystery and magic. Once each year, the strict hierarchies dissolved for a single night, and everyone, from servants to nobility, wore masks that concealed identity. In this one evening, a blacksmith might dance with a duchess, a guard might share wine with a minister, and no one would know until the midnight unmasking. Isara had attended countless festivals, always as the recognized queen, surrounded by guards and unable to move freely. But this year, something reckless bloomed in her chest. She dismissed her attendants, donned a mask of silver filigree that covered the upper half of her face, and slipped into the grand ballroom wearing a gown of deep emerald that bore no royal insignia. For the first time in her reign, she was anonymous. The ballroom swirled with color and music, couples spinning across marble floors while musicians played from gilded balconies. Isara moved through the crowd, intoxicated by the simple freedom of being unseen, unknown. Her eyes searched the gathering, looking for one particular scholar who might have been invited as a gesture of royal favor. She found him near the terrace doors, unmistakable despite his mask of dark leather and bronze. Something about the way he stood, slightly apart, observing rather than participating, called to her. Kael watched the dancers with the same intensity he brought to his ancient texts, trying to decode the patterns and meaning. Isara approached, her heart racing with uncharacteristic boldness. "You look as though you're studying the festival rather than enjoying it." She pitched her voice slightly lower than usual. Kael turned, and even through the mask she saw his eyes widen with interest. "I confess I'm more comfortable with books than ballrooms, though the scenery has improved considerably." The flirtation surprised them both. Isara felt a smile curve her lips. "Perhaps you need a guide, someone to show you that history isn't only found in ancient stones. And are you offering to be that guide?" "I am." He extended his hand, and she took it, allowing him to lead her onto the dance floor. The orchestra swelled into a waltz, and they moved together with surprising harmony. Kael's hand rested at her waist, proper but warm, while her fingers curled around his shoulder. "You dance well for a scholar," Isara murmured as they turned. "My mother insisted I learn. She said a gentleman should know how to hold a lady properly." His hand tightened slightly, drawing her fractionally closer. "Though I never imagined holding someone quite like you. You don't even know who I am. Perhaps that's what makes this perfect. Tonight, you're not a title or a position. You're simply the woman in my arms, and that's enough." Isara's breath caught. How did he know? Or was it coincidence that his words struck so precisely at her deepest longing?
The weight of a crown. The dawn of new kingdoms. The throne room had never held so many people. Every noble, every advisor, every member of the court crowded into the crystalline space, their whispers echoing off the walls like restless spirits. They had been summoned for a royal announcement, though none knew its nature. Speculation ran wild. Would the queen bow to pressure and announce an advantageous engagement? Would she punish the scholar who had dared touch her? Isara stood before her throne, not sitting upon it. She wore her full regalia, crown, scepter, robes of state, every symbol of her authority on display. But her eyes, those luminous eyes that had first caught Kael's attention in the gallery of echoes, held something the court had never seen before: absolute resolve. Kael stood among the scholars in the back, his heart hammering against his ribs. They hadn't spoken since their night in the council chamber. She had sent him a simple message: "Trust me."
Now, watching her face the assembled court with her chin raised and her spine straight, he did. "My loyal subjects," Isara began, her voice carrying through the throne room with practiced authority. "For 12 years I have served this kingdom with every breath in my body. I have negotiated treaties, settled disputes, managed harvests and hardships. I have been the crown you needed, the symbol you demanded. And in those 12 years I have learned something that our ancestors knew, but we have forgotten." She paused, letting the silence build. "A queen's strength does not come from being untouchable. It comes from being fully, completely human. From understanding joy and sorrow, love and loss, hope and fear, not as distant concepts, but as lived truths." Lord Merkin stepped forward. "Your Majesty, if this is about the scholar, this is about the future of this kingdom," Isara interrupted, her voice sharp as a blade. "For too long we have believed that rulers must be separate from their people, elevated and distant. But how can I understand the needs of farmers if I have never felt the earth between my fingers? How can I judge matters of the heart if mine has never been allowed to beat for anything beyond duty?" She descended the steps of the dais, moving among her people rather than standing above them. "3 nights ago, at the Festival of Veiled Hearts, I danced with a man who saw me, truly saw me, not as a crown or a title, but as a person. He spoke to me with honesty when everyone else offered only calculated flattery. And yes, I kissed him, because in that moment I chose to be human rather than just a queen." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Isara continued, her voice growing stronger. "You have counseled me to marry for advantage, to choose a husband as one would choose a trade agreement. But I ask you, do you want a queen who understands love only as a political tool? Or do you want a queen who knows what it means to choose with her heart, who can empathize with every person in this kingdom facing the same choice?" Lady Vesper's voice rose, sharp with concern. "You would risk the kingdom's stability for personal desire?" "I would strengthen it," Isara countered. "Our neighboring kingdoms already respect our treaties. Our harvests are abundant. Our people are content. What we lack is not political alliances, but hope. The hope that comes from seeing their queen choose courage over convenience, truth over tradition." She turned, her eyes finding Kale in the crowd. "Kale Riven, please step forward." The crowd parted reluctantly. Kale walked through them with his heart in his throat, aware of hundreds of hostile eyes tracking his movement. When he reached Isara, he bowed deeply. "Rise," she said softly, and when he did, she took his hand in front of everyone. "This man is a scholar of forgotten languages, a wanderer with no title or land to his name. By traditional standards, he offers this kingdom nothing of value." Kale felt his heart sink, but Isara squeezed his hand and he understood. "Trust me." "But he has offered me something infinitely more precious. He has shown me that a queen can be both strong and soft, both powerful and vulnerable. He has reminded me that the ancient rulers we so admire were beloved not because they were distant, but because they were profoundly, beautifully human." She turned to address the full court. "I do not announce an engagement today. I announce an intention. To court this man openly, honestly, as any woman in this kingdom is free to do. To explore what we might become together without hiding or pretending. And I invite you, my people, to judge me not by whom I love, but by how I serve." The silence that followed felt endless. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a single person began to applaud. Then another. then more, until the sound swelled like a wave, drowning out the protests of the traditionalists. Isara looked at Kale, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "What say you, scholar? Will you allow a queen to court you?" "I say yes, though I think it's I who will be courting you. And I promise to spend every day proving myself worthy of your choice." "You already have," she whispered, and kissed him again, gentler than at the festival, but no less profound. The seasons turned. Opposition faded as the kingdom watched their queen bloom like the moonflower she tended. Isara ruled with a wisdom that came from embracing her full humanity, and her people loved her for it. Kale remained by her side, not as a consort defined by politics, but as a partner, chosen freely, deliberately, courageously. On the anniversary of the Festival of Veiled Hearts, they married in the Moonflower Gardens at sunset, surrounded by those who had learned to see strength in softness, power in vulnerability. And when the ancient vows were spoken, in both the common tongue and the old languages Kale had taught her, Isara knew she had not chosen between crown and heart. She had proven they could coexist. Years later, when scholars wrote of Queen Isara Sylvain's reign, they spoke of her wisdom and justice, but they also wrote of the night she danced in an emerald gown, of the scholar who saw her truly, and of the whisper that carried through crystal halls and changed a kingdom forever. She moves like poetry made flesh, and she had heard him, and turned, and chosen. The end.